Reading 14 from the Psychological Commentaries on the Teaching of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky by Dr. Maurice Nicoll, Volume 2. Birdlip, Easter, April 9th, 1944. The Enneagram, 10. The beginning of shock at point 6. Observation of and separation from oneself. After an interval of some time, we will return to the fundamental idea of the work, that in order to change it is necessary to observe oneself and notice what one is like at present. In what part of you is what you are at present? It is in all the roles and centers laid down by the particular action of life on you. What does this mean? It means that since childhood, you have had laid down in you particular associations that are represented in your centers and that act mechanically. Everyone here has had laid down in his or her centers particular views and ways of taking things from the mother, from the father, from nurses, from people who surrounded them. You all take this built-up thing as yourself. Yet it is merely one pattern of all possible ourselves. But this is very difficult to grasp. All this associative stuff laid down in centers from earliest life makes you a certain kind or pattern of person. And here I would say, is it not very remarkable that no one thinks that he or she is in any sense a particular kind of person, a person who always behaves in this way or that way, and so on? It is interesting because everyone has the idea that he or she is quite free and can behave, speak, act, understand, and so on, just as they wish to. This is illusion. The personality built up from mama, papa, nurse, school, etc. is very powerful. It is always acting for you. Yet, we have the vision, the feeling, the idea that we are free and are in no way prejudiced, in no way fixed, in no way machines. I said that this was illusion. Yet, at the same time, it is not illusion, in the sense that it is possible to dissolve the machine of personality and become free. For this, it is necessary to pay, and pay for a long time. The work is to make this payment right. It begins with self-observation. What does self-observation mean? It means to observe what you are like, how you react, what makes you negative, and so on. This work teaches you specifically to observe certain sides of yourself uncritically, that is, without justifying yourself one way or the other. To see what you take as yourself, to see the machine of responses, the machine of behavior, the machine of thoughts, of prejudices, of feelings. This is the idea behind self-observation. You will agree with me that a person cannot change unless he or she sees themselves. But people make the most fantastic and ineffectual attempts to see themselves. They usually think they should smoke or eat less, or get up earlier, or work harder at their money-making jobs, and so on. Now, this work does not start with anything of that kind. It starts with one's psychological side. One must observe this side first. This is where what you take as you is. First, the change in mind must come, the change in your regard for yourself, the change in your very feeling of yourself. As you know, everyone is identified with himself, with herself, and they expect to start from themselves as they are. The work is about making this yourself this oneself, more passive. Who are you? What are you? You are a built-up thing of no use or of little use to you. But you are a slave to this thing you take for granted, this yourself, this oneself. The work is to change this basis you rest on, this blind acceptance, this thing in you that you have never questioned, and so never seen. Life lays down in us, chiefly by our imitating, thousands of attitudes, buffers, pictures, gramophone records, in fact, thousands of associative patterns. We feel uncomfortable if we do not follow them. It is one edition of oneself. The work is about ceasing to identify with this oneself, formed by the action of life and lying in the laid-down personality. Certainly, this is a very difficult matter and not for fools. To become orientated in a new way is not an easy matter. One must get under this oneself. The work can do nothing for you if you start from this oneself or yourself, that is, from personality. And here so many go wrong and cannot see the meaning of the work. Everyone has a consecrated feeling about themselves just as they are, but it is in the wrong place, in personality. The personality is not the sacred thing in oneself. The deeper feelings of oneself always have the miraculous quality of sacredness, which gives bliss. But we take this thing, oneself, as sacred, and so we have the feeling in the wrong place. That is, in the self-esteem, in the feeling we are right, in the precious past, in upbringing. It is necessary to shift this feeling, to go behind oneself, to renew it, to ascribe to oneself the idea of anything so deep, anything so full of meaning as the word sacred implies, is a crime against oneself. You remember, perhaps some of you, how in the Holy Grail legends, the young knight riding out to find the mystical school or castle must not obey his mother. This is capable of the crudest interpretations. But what does it mean? The mother is the source of your actions and feelings and thoughts. One must disobey the personality. In this work, what is it that we have to observe? This thing we take for granted, and to which all day we say I. But it is not I. It is not real I. It is many acquired I's. It is a machine of acquired I's. One goes about fastened tight to it. One obeys it at every point. It says this, and you think you say it. It does that, and you think you do it. It feels this, and you think you feel it. It thinks that, and you believe you think it. It is a pattern found in the vast associative or silent areas of the brain. It is your pattern, your registrations, your attempts to form yourself. It is a small set of electrical connections out of billions, owing to which you must always ring up the same places and get the same numbers. It is a machine in you. How, said G once, is it possible to make impressions fall on new places in centers? This is my task. He began by making people make new movements, and he also began by making people do things that they were not accustomed to do. The truth, he said, is that everything becomes mechanical after a time. How to make things new? Everything becomes mechanical. What do you think yourselves? Have you taken this day quite mechanically? Have you taken your domestic problems just as always? Have you tried to transform anything by taking it in a new way? It is difficult, but it is possible. This is the supreme object of the work, to get rid of one's acquired mechanical way of taking everything according to one pattern, one set of associations, one idea of what is right or wrong. The subject of this work is oneself. You and yourself are not the same, but you take them as the same. People identify with themselves. You identify with yourself, and so yourself becomes you. You, however, are far older than yourself. But since we do not know ourselves, we do not know that there is anything different in us from ourselves. And the outer yourself becomes fused to the inner you, and there is no separation. To observe yourself begins to make a separation. It begins to divide yourself from you. But at first this you is merely observing I. Yet, from observing I arises deputy steward, which leads to steward, which in turn opens on to real I. This is you, and this you is unattainable if you take yourself as you. To leave behind oneself is not quite what people think. Often when they think they are leaving themselves behind, they are really more identified. The work gives some interesting teaching on what it is that we have to observe and leave behind. However, people tend to think they know already and make a problem of, say, eating, or say, of smoking, or they deny themselves decent clothes or a bus fare when it is not necessary to do so. Such eyes need to be observed and separated from. They can form a very powerful system of tyranny in a person. They arise from early associations. A person can remain a slave to them throughout life. It is a dreary slavery leading to nothing. Now, in self-observation, you begin to notice where you are bound and to what you are bound. This will be in accordance with the feeling of the work, for the work shows up life and its action on you. The work is against life. Life has created eyes that trade on us and even eat us. These are of every kind. Suppose one could let the influences of the work make a scourge and drive out these eyes. We should probably be very surprised at what was driven out. I mean, at what the work selected as useless. The first step in the work is to begin to free oneself from oneself. This work is not adding something to oneself, but taking away from oneself, and it is only what is useless to one's development that the work seeks to take away.